who follow digital policy developments in the EU, you know that Eva does not need an introduction, as she's most certainly one of the most prominent leaders in this domain in Europe. Eva was elected Vice President of the European Parliament in January 2022. She's also the first woman to chair the panel for the future of science and technology, STOA, and the Center for Artificial Intelligence. She is an MEP since 2014 and member of many other committees within the EU as well. It is my great honor to have Eva joining us today. I also wanted to add that Eva has been a contributor to and a supporter of our discussion platform since its inception 3 years ago. And we are very grateful to count on her for future collaboration as well. Now, when preparing for this session, it was clear to me that Eva's preference was to have a real dialogue with you. Eva will start with a short introductory remarks on the latest with regards to the EU AI Act, as well as other digital initiatives beyond the AI and as well as their implications. After that, I will open the floor to a Q&A. And due to high demands on her schedule, Eva will only be here with us for half an hour. So do have your questions ready. And I hope that we will have a lively debate. Now, without any further ado, warm welcome to Eva from all of us here in Switzerland and those joining us online from different parts of the world. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Ayisha, so much for the invitation and your very kind words to speak at this year's AI Policy Summit. I hope next time I will manage to be there and also to have a physical meeting. And it's a pleasure to be part of such an excellent and exciting event with great speakers. I have a lot of people that I know and I respect in this program, and they are very important also policymakers from around the world. So you were too kind to say that we worked a lot on this file on behalf of the European Parliament. 10 years ago, artificial intelligence was more perceived as science fiction and more worrying as its black side of the mirror. So I would say people were always concerned, and they thought it was like very far in the future that we would have to deal with it. But today, also with the catalyst of the pandemic, AI is everywhere. We expect solutions from AI. We expect the benefits of artificial intelligence. We understand that in a short definition, AI is not just automation. AI is also can also develop into becoming completely autonomous in taking decisions, but if it's embedded in hardware, even acting. So this could help us basically automate, optimize, outsource decisions, the ones that we want, across sectors, from healthcare and social services to education, finance, manufacturing, security. And we thought that the creative jobs would not also be like safe, but we see that AI can also do that. So what we need to say in the beginning of this discussion is that we want AI to be human-centric. So we want it to be complementary to benefit citizens, to take on the difficult and dangerous tasks, to be able to help us with our decisions and not replace humans. Some examples, because I was talking about art, there was the deep neural network MuseNet that actually can generate musical compositions and combine different styles, like from Mozart and Beatles to jazz or blues. There is Jasper AI that it helps humans write essays, blog posts, and even novels. I don't know if people like that, the result, or if they feel it lacks of this human spirit, but still, this is something that can be achieved by AI. In medicine, we have lenses that can predict or understand when somebody's pressure is increasing. And also we have Microsoft designing a system where blind children can make sense and engage with their social surroundings, which we understand can be an amazing revolution to help people get their lives back. Stanford developed an algorithm that can help also detect autism and its severity by just looking at brain scans in a much better percentage than humans can. Again, I have to say it's always complementary, because there are a lot of factors and social factors and ethical factors that either we will manage at one day to have them included in an algorithm, because an algorithm is basically an equation where we add different metrics, and this is a decision taken by humans, and humans are not perfect, and all the income and the data collection can be unlimited. Also measuring the experience that people have, the environment, and things that we cannot even put on paper. AI promises also to do a lot more to optimize energy grids, predict maintenance. This could save a lot of costs. It could keep us safe with automated vehicles that they can take us to the place we want in the fastest possible way. So if I was there, I would ask who has Google Maps on their device, because if you're using them, even for the shortest trip from a road that you actually already know, it's because you have already outsourced your trust to AI, that it knows better if there is traffic, it has a live update, and it can predict the time you will arrive. So it can suggest another alternative route, and you trust it. You trust it already enough to say that, no, the road I know best is not the best. So we have, however, negative effects, and this is where we have to focus. We have to focus because my job is to protect citizens, and also is to predict the worst case scenario and make sure it will never happen. We had in Netherlands, I think you all know, an algorithmic system to spot fraudulent claims for childcare benefit. But however, the criteria for the risk profiles, they were flawed, and human checks were absent. And this caused the system to amplify the institutional biases and wrongly accuse thousands of parents of fraud and create distrust to AI. In the UK, we saw also an algorithm that was used to grade the exams of students and determine which ones could and should go and be accepted to universities. Again, the system failed, and actually it repeated biases by taking under account the background of its students. So basically, it was downgrading the scores of children coming from less advantaged schools and raising the scores of students coming from, I would say, richer neighborhoods. What happened was that even the Prime Minister blamed the algorithm. So the approach that Europe has is that we need to make it human-centric, and we want to have human oversight. This means there's always be an understanding that there could be a mistake, and then we have the right to redress. We have the right to ask for a second chance. We have the right to ask for more criteria to be included. So technology can have a real impact. It's online mainly, but it has offline results. And this is why we need to have oversight and accountability. And this is exactly what our act is coming to achieve, an ethical framework, basically. I worked on this file since 2018, and now it came as a legislative act. Also, it would support and respect our principles and our values, the right to private life, freedom of thought, on expression and information, and non-discrimination. What does this mean? It means that we cannot have an AI that manipulates our thoughts. How can AI do that? You open your timeline on your social platform and you see the content that is so personalized that you think that everybody's seeing the same things, or you think that some things that are maybe tough or they create fear and they become viral, they can affect your thoughts, and they can be the reality that you feel is out there. So this kind of manipulation for even targeted advertisement is now something that the AI Act will control. And it's building out of years of collaboration and exchanges with experts and the industry. There are still some issues to be resolved. It's maybe not 100% ready to have ethics by design, but this is what we want to achieve. We want to have human in the loop. We have to have safeguards and to test AI systems, especially in the high-risk ones. So I would say the main element is also that we have a risk-based approach. And this means that if you belong to this pyramid of the top of it, which is the most risk applications, then legal and technical obligations will escalate. They will be more strong, and you need to safeguard people from being under anything that could not keep them safe. So AI applications, for example, that they can pose health issues, health risks, safety risks, or fundamental human rights risks, they will be unacceptable, even banned. We have created a dynamic, I would say, organization of method of how to measure that. We have high-risk applications that can cause irreversible harm, and this means we would even have ex-ante requirements for data training, validation and testing, because this could also become embedded, and we need to make sure that it's going to be safe by design. And risk management measures, of course, transparency for that result. Now, when we talk about limited and minimal risk applications, which is the vast majority for the ones that they think we might create friction to innovation, the vast majority, it has minimum risk. So they can operate almost freely, and they can apply some of the requirements for the high-risk applications with some exceptions, but basically the burden is less of such safeguards. So I would say it's a great mix for actually high-risk standards and voluntary standards to be followed, and the final goal is to create trust and legal certainty for developers, but also users and operators of AI systems in Europe. It's also very important because we don't have to deal with 27 different set of rules, but with one. And I think this is a major step because AI goes beyond borders, and these emerging technologies also are extremely important when they come from successful applications in other countries to enter Europe and to be able to operate. We have a lot of initiatives among big organizations, initiatives that they want to set policy frameworks, legal rules, and ethical principles. I do believe that what the Parliament does is a global blueprint for how we can at least start regulating AI. It's very dynamic, which means it can change. The definition is also quite open. Because we have to see what are the extents of this technology, because it keeps developing. We have supercomputers. Depending on the data, we can achieve much more. And every day we realize that there are things that we haven't taken under consideration. Some of the things for the banning, and this is how I will conclude, is mass surveillance, biometric identification systems, basically, and social scoring in the private sector. That could actually create exclusion and discrimination, but even predictive policing. This could be used in some ways to keep people safe, but there is a very thin line to make sure that our privacy and our freedom of thinking is protected. And I think this is very important because we could even lead into intrusive neurotechnology. Biotech is going to be the next big revolution, and we have to make sure that there are rules already now. So there will be assessments, there will be a board, an AI board, independent, that will be there in order to fine-tune when there are questions, and to create regulatory sandboxes for the implementation of it. So as you know, it's a part of a bigger puzzle of legislation for the big platforms, that they have also extra responsibilities. And now we're trying to make sure that the data can be exchanged in a safe manner, close to GDPR, but GDPR is just for sensitive data. We want to have data governance for the rest of the data. And we have a key proposal also for the CHIPS Act, because the sensors are really important to be able not to have a production just limited in Taiwan, but to have basically in Europe and US the possibility to develop high edge computing and new chips that they would be necessary for our safety and even for health applications. So I think anticipating risks in the supply chain and disruptions, we are doing our best. We are investing a lot. There going to be a lot of funding for applications to be tested. And of course, we want to incentivize that, and we want to influence regulation also in other countries. Hopefully, this covers a percentage of the work we have achieved. And I would have a bit more time for questions. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Eva. Well, I hope that you're thinking about your questions. So while we're having them come in, I'll just pose one already. So obviously, the EU AI draft is going to have geopolitical implications, and obviously a lot of the other parts of the world are looking at it right now as well. So I think we would be quite interested, because of course we also have people here from Switzerland, from the US and other parts of the world, to just sort of have your take on how other parts of the world are actually viewing this, and what has been the sort of reception that you've had to the EU AI Draft Act.
I don't have the feeling that is negatively perceived. I actually have the feeling that it's working as a blueprint with different approaches, of course, because we understand, for example, in China, social scoring is acceptable. It's not in Europe. So it's in respect with different cultures also, I can call it like that. You can have in China surveillance cameras everywhere and people feel safe. But this you can have even in UK and say that it is okay. For the Europeans and for like some countries, these are violating our rights to privacy. So I would say, in order to see the impact of that, we are entering different forums, and we have seen that US is engaging in a dialogue with Europe through the Trade and Technology Council. It's, I think, an important effort to address these technology challenges with our democratic allies and make sure we will have common standards, at least the minimum ones. We're working with OECD at the level of the Global Parliamentary Network also, but also at the G7, there is a different other layer of collaboration. So I feel that having a blueprint is the beginning, but there are so many efforts in order to achieve, let's say, a global law, international law on AI that would create trust also beyond borders. And I launched the Center for Artificial Intelligence just 3 years ago. We are trying to see the impact, the implications per sector, and we're trying to see what are the differences, also the geopolitical impact it has. So we keep working into fine-tuning everything to make sure that we will not be defensive into amazing applications, and we will remain innovation friendly, technologically and business neutral. So I think these are the principles, and my hope is that they will translate into basic global standards for AI development, and that this vision will be shared with within the world.
Well, thank you. Thanks also to highlight actually a point which not many are always looking at, because everybody's looking at more the constraints that the EU AI draft is posing, but not so much some of those opportunities, and the fact that there is a big part of it which is also innovation friendly. Just first of all, any questions from the audience here at this point in time? We have a question, so I'll open that up. Avinash, you can actually have a little.
Yeah, so I have very specific question. Few days back, the US introduced their Bill of Rights, AI Bill of Rights. So how the US approach is having difference with the EU approach, and especially from the developing countries point of view, because we get a lot of confusion sometime, because we have to comply with global standards set by the EU authorities like the GDPR. At the same time, now the US is also bringing their own rules and regulations in the AI. So what do you think about the US AI rights of bill? Like, is going to create some confusion at the global standards, or it's in the line with the EU approach?
It's about the US Bill of Rights.
Yeah, US Bill of Rights.
Right. It's Eva, any comments on that one? Basically, how is the relationship, how is the approach of US versus EU, and essentially for developing countries like India that are looking at that, a little bit some advice on how they can approach it.
So I understand that there was a dialogue about GDPR, which was the first piece of legislation that was welcomed globally as a blueprint, and we saw a lot of countries from different parts of the world following what Europe did. And this was the ambition that we had with AI, so to make sure that people would like to follow that. It doesn't matter, they need to copy like 100%. There are no copyrights, they can copy 90%, 80%, or like something. But I would say that since we developed such a piece of legislation that comes after years of consultation, public consultation, a lot of stakeholders coming into the table of the discussion with several workshops and taking under consideration, of course, all the technological limitations, but also possibilities. I think that we can save time and not duplicate these efforts. So to see what can be used. In India, for example, I remember I read an article where AI was choosing who is going to get a benefit coupon for food per week, and it didn't recognize a face. It failed to recognize a face that had the right to have access to such benefits, and these people couldn't find a person to address and claim for it, and they had an extreme problem in their family. So I would say that we have the possibility to test, create sandboxes for such applications before we completely outsource our trust. And I think the model that says we have human oversight will also help us avoid such incidents that could become tragic for families and for people, and they can completely create distrust to AI systems. I understand that we have different cultures and approaches. For example, in US, they prefer to have a great, industry leading in AI without restrictions. So to have the possibility to test everything. In Europe, we have a different approach. We prefer to have quality in our life, and we want to prioritize the benefit of citizens vs profit. We want to have, of course, an innovation-friendly environment, but it has to follow also our culture and our citizens. If you ask them what they want, they don't want to compromise their privacy or their freedoms or the principles we have and the democratic processes. The dangers we see of AI systems, they are already here. I don't know if you have seen the Black Mirror on Netflix. It's been there, I think, at least 5 years. These are technologies we already have. So technology is not good or bad, it's how you use it. So we want to make sure we will regulate the uses and we will discourage the negative use of such technology that can completely control citizens and remove their freedoms and outsource everything to through an AI system, of course, to the people that they control such technologies. So this would be the vision. And I've seen that a lot of states already in US, they try to have the similar approach. Again, because as it happened with GDPR, at some point companies came and said, when mistakes happened, we want to have legal certainty, so we need to have a law that we can follow. If there is no law, this is a chaotic possibility to develop AI, especially convergence with other technologies. So I think we are moving in a good direction, and we had the time to control this technology before it completely leaves our control, because this is also a possibility. It can become completely autonomous. I think we should not, and we will not take such a risk, at least in Europe.
Would you have just another few minutes, because I want to do justice also to those joining us online, and I do want to ask Arvind to please tell us if we have any questions from the chat for Eva.
Thanks, Ayisha. Yes, pretty vivid discussion, but most of it Eva already mentioned or touched upon, but just to kind of go through it. Question, of course, main challenges which UA is facing in framing the way forward to advance the current AI Act proposal. You did kind of touch upon that, Eva, but just maybe what was the main challenges facing way forward? And to what extent is discussion on the EU AI Act in the Council of Europe AI Treaty are moving forward in the same direction? What are the kind of main differences there? And another from Andres Felderer, who actually asked about strong interconnection between European American AI researchers with the big tech. We call it kind of big tech, Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, etc. Do you find that problematic? If yes, is there any plans to address this possible conflict of interest, or kind of put differently, how does the EU plan to guide AI research? Thanks.
Well, thank you. Let me say that I think these questions touch upon also different pieces of legislation. So we have the Digital Services Act, the Digital Markets Act. These are pieces of legislation that give more responsibility to the big platforms in order to protect people from harmful tactics and patterns that we have recognized to make sure that there are rules to follow. I do think that we managed to have the spirit of what the Council of Europe has suggested. I would say we went into the safe side of regulating AI, and there still are actually debates on if we should completely ban face recognition in public spaces, but also in I would add in the private sector, that they can measure the productivity of workers and they can impose extreme stress to them. So they can be there, they say, to support workers or to keep them safe, but at the same time, we've seen in some of the big companies you mentioned that they are used to have full surveillance on workers and in different tasks in order to push them to be more productive and understand the patterns and help them improve their productivity. So these are things that we have debated a lot in Europe. There were different approaches, of course. What I'm saying, though, I think it reflects the majority and the perception we had. So we prefer to compromise a bit, maybe the standards that other countries have, in order to be on the safe side. But of course, there are always exceptions. So if we have face recognition for diagnosis, or to predict a disease and a chronic disease, and if this would be useful for scientists in order to get better results and to have, in the meantime, to develop better solutions and treatments, then of course, these are technologies that we have to use and take full advantage of. So this was like one of the big issues we had debated: the face recognition, the biometric surveillance, social scoring, what kind of applications are high risk and low risk, and if it should be, there should be obligations by design. What about predictive policing, if this could help us stay safe from terrorist attacks, and what is the compromise there also for automated weapons? So this is something that Europe doesn't want to support, but of course then you have its member states' decision in defense and security that you cannot stop such research, or you have other countries that they are hostile and that they develop such technology. So you have to develop technologies in order to have a better defense capacity for systems that they are automated weapons, so autonomous weapons. So these are very thin lines that we try to not, cross into into allowing maybe the industry exploring such moving into such dangerous paths. But again, as I said, this technology keeps surprising us every day. We have seen the possibilities it have to predict 3D protein structures. It could unleash the power of nuclear fusion. So we have to see what and how we should deal with it also in the future. But for the time being, these are the main debates. And again, we are dealing with the exchange of data even separately to make sure that it's possible, but in a safe manner. As you understand, even with metadata, so the data that they're not sensitive and they're actually easily available, there is a great lack of privacy already in our world. So you can, if you see, for example, the news in Greece, you can see that the police can access your Apple Watch or your mobile device and find out when a victim was breathing and when it stopped breathing, and when the internet shut down, and when they were texting or not. So you have so much metadata that they can help you resolve cases like that, but also that they can be misused and completely violate our privacy for financial gain, for political gains, that can threaten our democracy, as we saw happening with Cambridge Analytica, where people were categorized and targeted with advertisements to change just slightly a few votes and completely change the result and the future of Europe.
Well, thank you very much, Eva. I know I've been informed by your team that you have to go. So it has been such a pleasure. Thank you always for your very insightful interventions. And we hope, of course, to continue the dialogue. It's going to be very important what happens in the EU. We here from Switzerland are watching very carefully, and also from other parts of the world. So wishing you the very best. And we will, in fact, now, so thank you, Eva, all the best.
Please reach out. There are always things we are learning or we're realizing, and there's always the possibility to change and influence these processes that they are ongoing. So thank you so much, and we will stay in touch. Bye.